gosh. It's just so heavy. It's like asking to move a cruise ship. Armed. Floor it. Flooring it. Release brake. Oh. Okay. Whoa. That is an awkward sensation and one I really like. Whoa, crab walk, coolest thing ever. And then I click that off and we're back in rear auto. This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later. Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Welcome here to beautiful, sunny Arizona, and welcome to the Rivian R1T. Also, welcome to the Hummer EV. I've been driving this Rivian around getting a feel for an electric pickup truck, and I have to say I've been loving it. It's kind to the environment. It has a sense of adventure. It has a sense of purpose in terms of speed, and it seems to be built really well. It looks very pleasant. And then you got this thing, which is just hell yeah, brother. American freedom right here, American excess, 1,000 horsepower Hummer EV. This thing's got watts to freedom. It's gonna be insane. And in this video, I'm gonna drive it for the first time. So let's park the Rivian, hop inside the Hummer EV, and take it out on the road, on the highway, try SuperCruise, bring it to an Electrify America charging station, try to see how well it charges. It has, again, high voltage, should do 350 kilowatts. And let's see how the new Hummer EV is. So you have to forgive this tight parking lot that we are in. Unfortunately, we basically don't have much time with the Hummer. I only have about 2 or 3 hours to drive it. We did some driving today, but I mostly rode in the vehicle. You guys know I like to share my very first driving impressions with you here on YouTube, so I'll put in some clips, but we went off-roading today on a very light trail, nothing extreme, just to kind of flex out the vehicle, see how its 3-motor system works. But I just rode for the whole thing. I got to meet with the engineers, learn a little bit about the engineering of the truck, which I'll share all of it with you in this video. But of course, we're gonna go take it out on the road. And well, you can see I've been having some fun with the Rivian. Head to our sister channel, Out of Spec Motoring, where we have a video posted as to why this is covered in mud, crossing the La Salle Mountains and just absolutely tearing up this 4-motor electric, I would say, super truck. But then this is truly a super truck, and it is at least branded this way. So this is not really going to be a comparison, but since I have them both next to each other, I may as well show you. You can see, first of all, just how much smaller the Rivian is in comparison to the Hummer EV. If I pop the frunk on the Hummer EV, I can do both from the key fob. You can see this one's opening now. And the Rivian definitely has a faster opening frunk. So a couple things that I like about the Hummer in comparison to the Rivian. The Rivian has a nice front trunk, good underfloor storage, of course. Seems pretty nice. It has a little switch right here. When it's covered in mud, it doesn't work that great, but you can open and close the front trunk, of course, automatically. Why didn't that work? I'm not sure. Let me grab out the key, which is a carabiner, which works pretty well. And let's go close the front trunk. There we go. I think the Rivian looks better, in my opinion. It's got the good headlight design. Again, not a comparison. It's just the only other electric truck that's on the market today. And you can see here a really nice large front trunk. Right here, it has the covers for the roof panels, which actually pop off. This thing can be turned into a convertible. How sick is that? These all come off. And one of the reasons that that can happen is its giant 212 usable kilowatt hour battery pack acts as a structural component to the car, to the truck. And I like how this front portion comes up with the hood. It means you can load things in a little bit easier. Some other things that are interesting is these headlights will act as a charging indicator for you. And I think they've just gone full excess with this truck. It has 3 motors, over 1,000 horsepower, 0 to 60 in just about 3 seconds with WTF mode, watts to freedom, but we all know what it really stands for. What the F? This episode is proudly brought to you by Magna. Magna is a mobility technology company that is super unique because they touch every aspect of almost every car on the market, especially a lot of electric vehicles, and they even can produce vehicles from the ground up. Now, you may remember I shot a series just recently testing some of their new electric vehicle powertrains, so stay tuned for a lot of Magna content to come. We're going to be going in depth with some really interesting topics with these guys, and Out of Spec wants to thank Magna for sponsoring this review and tons of other videos to come right here on Out of Spec. We look forward to working with Magna to define and find out what the future of mobility looks like. And we're definitely going to be trying that. But first, I think we should take it over to a charging station and charge it up, because we're at pretty low state of charge. Yeah, 40%. I definitely want to experience the first hard acceleration with much higher state of charge than that. I can tell you the battery's already warm. Let's take a look inside the back seat here first. And I have to say, I'm loving this roof design, although I rode around in it in the sun today, and it definitely seems to get a little bit warm inside the cab. Thankfully, it has great rear air conditioning. GMs in general always have great air conditioning. Let's hop inside. I have the driver's seat set for myself, and you can see pretty good leg room. My knees are pretty high. That's because the battery pack seems to come up pretty high, but everything's moon themed. So you have all this moon topographical maps and stuff like that. Let me show you my headroom, of course, but that's the view out the front. We'll talk about the infotainment system, everything like that. But in terms of headroom, pretty good. We had the roof panels off earlier. It was awesome. I have a little center armrest with 2 cup holders, no storage in here. USB-C, USB-A. Let me show you that right over here. I can, of course, change the temperature. That's all pretty sweet. Everything feels pretty rugged. Nothing, I would say, feels like a premium material to me. This all honestly feels like more of this rugged, new textured materials. This is just straight plastic. And you know, this thing's just over $100,000 as configured with the big battery, 3 motors. And I have to say, I think that's actually a pretty reasonable value, especially considering the Rivian now is about $100,000. This one's about $95,000 at the new pricing. And I think this is even a pretty good value. I've really fallen in love with this truck, but this is just so much beefier. Look how much taller. It makes the Rivian look like a toy. Here's your charging port. It can do, I believe, 80 amp J1772 on AC charging, and then 350 kilowatts here. The pack voltage, we'll get into it when we get to a charging station, is actually about 650 volts nominal. So you're not going to get 350 kilowatt at very low state of charge, because CCS is limited to 500 amps. I know that might sound like jargon to some of you, but maybe I'll explain that in a future podcast over on the Out of Spec podcast channel here on YouTube. We have the spare tire carrier, and thankfully so, because we actually got a flat tire earlier today. You see, GMC took us off-roading, and our driver, the guy driving this truck during the time, ran over a rock, punctured the tire, and GMC recommended we did not air down for this. I would have aired down the tires to about 30 to 35 PSI. We were running about 46 PSI road tire pressures. So anyway, we put a new wheel and tire on that was originally in the carrier, and we are good to go. You can see we got pinstriping scratches all throughout the vehicle because we were brushing up. So man, this thing's gonna need a serious paint correction after quite a crazy program. You can see the other side of the back seat here. Let me open up the front passenger seat. I also had a chance to ride in it earlier today. I'll share my initial impression, which was extremely comfortable. Air vents seem nice. Again, great air conditioning system. Pretty Spartan interior. We'll talk about the UI and things as time goes, but just to show you around, storage, all fairly normal in here, I have to say. So overall, I'm really loving the layout of the truck. I think it feels less silly in my mind. You know, there's still things like single pane glass, right? It's not the quietest thing on the road, but I will say not a single creak or rattle. I've heard in other reviews, perhaps maybe the roof rattles, not in this particular one. This literally being beaten off-road all day felt very well put together. No issues, no concerns, and everything was really good. So the range, I know you're going to ask, let's run through some of the specifications. It has about a 321 mile range by the EPA, and that is for the 3-motor big battery pack. Again, 212 kilowatt hours usable. I believe it's between 205 and 212 usable. It's hard to get an exact figure on that, but a huge ass battery pack. In comparison, the Rivian has pretty much the same rated range, but only has a 125 to 128 kilowatt hour usable. And I've actually tested this exact truck at about 290 miles at 70 miles an hour. For this same vehicle to go the same distance requires so much more energy, which makes this, in true Hummer fashion, the least efficient electric vehicle ever made. Now, you guys know I don't get so hung up on efficiency. I think it's kind of crazy, but like, it is pretty interesting how inefficient this Hummer really is. And so let's hope it makes up for it in driving, because that's a huge penalty over the Rivian, just in terms of charging cost and even charging time, especially at level 2 stations. This could take 30 or 40 hours to charge, even at level 2 from dead to full, whereas this can take 20 plus hours, you know, on some level 2 stations. So anyway, definitely getting into big battery packs here requires some infrastructure conversations. I really love how this display says Hummer with the EV here in the corner. They've made it look great. These recovery points are chassis mounted, so you can rip on them all day long. And again, this is the first edition, which only comes in white. You can't get any other color because it's a moon theme. Anyway, I keep going on about stuff. So you got range, you got charging at 350 kilowatts, you got price at just over 100 grand. I don't know if it qualifies for the $7,500 federal tax credit. I think it does. And I think it's time we jump in and go for a drive. But just to give you one last glance at these two next to each other, yeah, this is so much more understated, and this is so much more hell yeah America in your face. And honestly, I think it works for a certain kind of person. I like it. I think this is going to be the ultimate Miami CrossFit mobile. It also has crab walk, which we're going to be trying. It has 10 degrees of rear axle steering, which we'll play around with. So this is going to be a heavy driving review. Let's get in and go for a drive. So starting over here on the left-hand side, we have a couple little things. We have our lane departure that will basically push us in if we hit a line. You can see it coming up on the infotainment right there. So we'll keep that on. What else do we have? Lights. We have a 400 watt power outlet. I believe it doesn't do anything more. That seems like kind of a missed opportunity with other trucks like Ford Pro Power on board, Silverado, the Rivian having a lot more power than that. But definitely not the case here. It also has SuperCruise, which is awesome. So you can see this with this eye tracking. It will do lane centering on pre-mapped highways. I'm really looking forward to trying this out. It even makes lane changes, even, you know, with the turn signal, but even automatically. And one of the best features of Chevy or GM EVs in general is the regen paddle. So if you want max regen, you can just pull this paddle and it'll go to max. I'm really looking forward to seeing how much power we can pull out of it and how much we can stuff into it. We got to do a max regen test over to the charger. My plan is let's drive it in the city, maybe a little bit of stop and go traffic to the Electrify America charger, juice it up to maybe 70 or 80% state of charge, something like that, and then head out and try Watts to Freedom mode. Again, I don't have too much time with it, but I just want to get a first taste of this truck. And again, we spent time in it off-roading today, and yeah, that was neat. So this infotainment system to me is pretty ugly. I don't know any other way to say it. Like, I just don't like visually how everything is super lightweight, and it's just not my style. Now, some people might like it, but it's seemingly a little bit laggy using it, at least today. Throughout the day, it's had a couple little glitches and things, but overall, it doesn't seem to do too much. It's running its own like engine, and actually when you do drive mode chains, it's really beautiful. So take a look at this. Boom, my mode, off-road, boom, terrain, boom. And it's kind of cool to see all the different drive modes and things like that. So let's start in normal mode. What is this one here? Off-road. We did a lot of that today. We'll start in normal mode and we'll try how the vehicle drives there. Here's our energy menu. So kind of the stuff that we want to know. Charge level, looks like we can set it from 80, 90, 100%. So from, wow, you can set the charge level down to 5%. That's crazy. Oh wait, it just says something that you can't do that. Why can't you do that actually? So you can set it from 50%. This is what I'm talking about with software. It's a little buggy. Anyway, you can set it from 50% to 100%. It's projected reflecting 329 miles being driven how it was driven today. I believe it's a guessometer system. You can see here on the display our charge level as well. It says service tire monitor system, and that's just because we took this tire off. This has a electric rear view mirror, of course, and we replaced it with a good working one. So the sensor is just a little wacky, so nothing to worry about there. That was our fault. You can schedule your charging, which is great. We can see our energy usage. I think we should definitely keep an eye on our energy usage. I'm really curious to see how this all works. And then our settings, DC fast charge, battery conditioning, status not ready. Look at this. You can manually precondition the charger. That's pretty neat. So to optimize charge speeds, yes, we're going to a charger. We want to start battery preconditioning. It says it might take up to an hour and will reduce range until charging begins. Now, I know the battery's already pretty warm because it's been driven today, but I do love this feature. I believe this and the Lucid Air are the only two EVs on the market that allow you to precondition the battery. Let's see. That all sounds good. It says DC fast charging conditioning in progress. Love that. What else do we have? We have some climate control stuff. This is a little interesting. You hit the seat button, and then you got to go over here to say hot or cold. And the fans in the seat make a huge noise. I don't know if you'll hear this when they kick on. There they are, ramping up. Sounds like a jet turbine in my seat. Definitely works, but it's loud. We can sync the temperatures left and right. You can turn the heat on or the AC on. I do like that you can turn that on and off for efficiency. I don't believe it has a heat pump, but I could be wrong. I think it does not. Once you have big batteries like this, and maybe it doesn't matter so much. I'm not so sure. Heated steering wheel, locking rear diff, except there isn't a rear differential that you can lock because it actually has two individual motors that will be virtually locked, if you will, but there's still some sort of slip angle target between them. The front axle is a single motor that can control wheel slip in two different ways, either by vectoring torque by grabbing brakes or by actually mechanically locking the front differential. It's an E-diff up front. Then you have your hazards, you have your traction control off, which shows up with TC there. I can push and hold, and then hopefully that can, if I push it twice, then it goes to watts to freedom mode. Well, we don't want to do that in a parking lot, so I'm going to cancel out of that. And vehicle will lower. I'm going to say, yeah, no thanks, cancel. All right, we don't want to do watts to freedom right now, but that is how you do it. You double click traction control to get into watts to freedom, parking sensors, and more. I don't actually know what that does. Oh, automatic parking, interesting. So these are all the types of automatic parking you can do. This is the big giant shifter. It can't really do anything. It doesn't do anything like this, except when you put your foot on the brake, you have to click the side to unlock it, pull it into drive, pull it into L. Because we have one pedal drive selected, I think it will just do that in drive. We'll play around with it. And then obviously push forward for reverse, park. We have a wireless charger, USB-A, USB-C, cup holders, and then all of our different suspension heights, our crab walk setting. So rear wheel steering off, rear wheel steering auto, off or auto. We definitely want rear wheel steering. What's this one? Your mode, your mission. epicideas@gmc.com. I don't know what that's all about. Oh, maybe this is an idea feedback situation that it's sending. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Anyway, that's interesting. I heard about that. And then if we hold down the left side, then we go into crab walk mode. You can see over here, boom. That's pretty neat. And then we get this crab on here. So what you do is you can hold this one down to go to crab walk, and then you push to get out of it to go back to rear wheel steering auto. I know I just hit you with a lot of info. Now let's go for a drive. We only have about really an hour and a half with it, sadly. All right, so I have everything set up. Genuinely haven't driven the truck yet, so let's put it into drive. We're gonna go to the Arizona Mills Mall. It says 32 minutes to go 13 miles. So we're definitely gonna get our fair share of stop and go. And then we definitely gotta find some roads. It's not really a performance truck, so we're not gonna rip it around on pavement, but let's just go for it. The steering, unbelievably light, first of all. And the vantage point is lovely. I can see everything on the outside of the car. It also has great camera views where I could click this and see, under the car, underneath the car, the bed. I can see, you can conduct a movie with all the cameras in this thing, which is really, truly wonderful. So we just need to be mindful of tail swing pulling out with rear steer. Of course, the vehicle pivots, and this has 10 degrees of rear steering, similar to the EQS that I've spent a lot of time in. So Rear steer is magical. It makes a vehicle just spin on its center axis. It's so cool. Man, I love that I can sit low in this thing. I didn't expect this to go that low. I love it. It's kind of cool because it feels like a freaking super truck. I could already tell there's quite a bit of one pedal stuff. So let's try that calibration here in one pedal drive. Gentle deceleration, coming to a stop, and holds us there on motor torque. Still doing it on motor torque. It's using 4 kilowatts to hold us. So I wonder if it actually blends brakes using 3 kilowatts, and then I can hit the brakes. Maybe it's just using 3 kilowatts to run the air conditioning systems. I'm not sure. So let's pull out here. Pretty empty roads. The vehicle feels really easy to drive. I mean, it doesn't feel that big. I have this wonderful rear view camera that's a literally like a visual camera thing. We're just going to make a quick U-turn here. Let's see if we can actually do it. Yes, look at that. Literally on our center axis. That's really nice. Wow, this thing is huge. And just rolling into it, you can tell there's quite a bit of power. That wasn't even wide open throttle. That felt pretty good. So, I mean, it just feels big and beefy and meaty. There's a nice Taycan, a Mach-E, a lot of EVs here in Arizona, I've noticed. I think because they give you access to the HOV lanes. They all have special plates. Lifting off, we're getting, wow, 160 kilowatt regen at 40 miles an hour. I can't wait to see how this works. But let's play around with the low speed stuff, everything I want to find out. So I have one pedal driving in high, which is the most amount of deceleration target in one pedal. If I lift off, we get regen set, and I pull the left paddle, we do get even more regen by hitting the paddle. That's so sweet. So let's speed up a little bit, pull the left paddle. The whole thing's pitching forwards, 223 kilowatts of regen at low speed. Holy smokes, this is gonna be incredible. So, you know, your friction brake should just last a really long time here. If I put the vehicle in L versus drive, it doesn't seem to make any difference from my perspective. Inching forward and stopping, inching forward, stopping. It feels about the same. Wow, and it makes these noises. I don't think I like the noises very much. This is like so soft and floaty. It's like a great vehicle to teach weight transfer. I don't know if you guys have ever played like Beam NG or one of these like video game situations that basically simulate vehicle dynamics and stuff. So like when you put the suspension to soft, it's like really wallowy, and that's what this feels like. But I'm curious to see how the roll stability feels. The suspension has a couple different aspects working on here. You have an air component, so I can raise the height from entry access mode to normal to off-road. There's also an extract function that goes like super high up, but that's not on the early production vehicles. That will be coming later through an over-the-air software update, GM claims. But we all know what it's like when we, you know, listen to manufacturer claims. It doesn't happen until it happens. Anyway, we also have an active damper, where I was talking to some of the suspension guys about this, and it's pretty interesting. They targeted a really soft, comfortable ride, and that means that the damper is basically off. There's no current needed when cruising down the highway, better for efficiency. And then when you put an input into the vehicle, whether it's steering or brake or acceleration that it needs to control pitch, dive, or roll, then they can stiffen the damper really quickly with an electrical current, obviously, to change the suspension characteristics. So that's pretty neat. Then there's also an electronic bump stop, and I don't fully understand how this works, but they basically can control the entire travel length of the suspension and have it act differently based off of total wheel travel. So they can really limit the amount of space that the wheel travels in, which is interesting. And when you go into the off-road mode, for example, you know, sort of their rock crawling mode, it really stiffens the suspension. So when you come down on something, you're not necessarily going to bottom the car out, which is really important, especially out in Moab and places where you're going to be rock crawling. Now, are people going to be off-roading these? I'm not so sure. Anyway, let's try some power. Just pitches back. It must look crazy from the outside just to see this thing. Whoop! It's exactly how I would have expected it to drive. It feels big and beefy. We're on 35-inch Goodyear tires, very similar tire to the Ram TRX, but it's actually an OE developed tire for the Hummer EV. So it's designed to handle, you know, a whole bunch of different compromises that need to go into a tire, especially for an electric truck with this much power and torque. But one thing I'd like to try is just handling. Very slow response time to inputs. Let's just do a quick lane change here. All right, so let's go lane change. Whoa, roly-poly. But it does a pretty good job of really managing the weight. The steering is, you know, the thing weighs 9,000 pounds almost. Let's go right lane change. Feels pretty good. Braking test. It just, you hear the tires. What's interesting about the brake pedal is it's an e-booster, so you just touch the brake pedal and then it just clamps down on the brake. So I was actually just giving it such little pressure and it was like right on the brakes. That's interesting. And good ABS feedback too. I think GM has one of the best braking strategies just across their model lineup. I've been really impressed with their braking, and that comes from their pickup trucks. I really think they understand how a brake pedal should feel and respond, and certainly that's the case here. One thing I will say though is that when I came off the brake pedal, it took like a half a second for it to realize I didn't want any more braking, and then it let up on the e-booster. So beautiful English cream golden retrievers, just like mine, Ellie. They're little Ellies. Oh, I can't wait to get back to Colorado and see Ellie. Anyway, cruising around town, this is where Hummer EVs are gonna probably spend most of their time, right? It feels quality, it feels big, it feels heavy, and it feels actually quite nice. Taycan Cross Turismo going by. So many EVs here. So that's kind of like it's around town driving stuff. It's got great response on the throttle, although it does have pretty big torque steer. So when you nail it, make sure you're kind of on the wheel. You saw that we came up and it pulled to the right a little bit. So that's something to be mindful of. And then, you know, let's talk about the battery pack system here. So there's roughly 2 full battery packs stacked on top of one another here. And the reason for this basically is they just needed to put a lot of batteries in this thing to give it a lot of range. And so you have roughly 320 plus or minus miles of range. And, you know, we'll have to see how this thing does in an efficiency test at 70 miles an hour. I don't have too much time with it this trip, but I promise we will get one in for more testing to do all the stuff we normally do. Yeah, that's a lot of batteries. And so in terms of charging, what's interesting is this is a 400 volt system architecture. That means that all of the systems in the vehicle run at 400 volts. And I believe there's 24 modules within this battery pack. And actually what's interesting about them is the BMS system's totally wireless. So for each module to communicate to each other, for balancing, for everything like this, it's all done wirelessly. There's no you know, tiny little high voltage cables connecting everything. I think it's really, really well engineered from a battery pack perspective. I actually got to spend some time with the lead battery pack engineer of this vehicle, and he really you know, gave me some great confidence. He said even you know, they don't have a guidance as to not charging it to 100% every day. They're like, yeah, just charge it to full every day, and you know, maybe if you charge it to 70 or 80% daily, you'll get a tiny bit more, but the vehicle, you just do whatever you want to the battery and don't worry about it. And I was like, wow, rarely have I heard that level of confidence from an automaker with their battery pack. So that leads to me like this Ultium strategy going forward is going to be pretty serious. So not only is this a 400 volt system architecture, it can actually, well, I should say the limitations. One of the limitations of a 400 volt system architecture, really the only one other than like heat in terms of energy transfer, it's really not that bad, is charging. So CCS, the connector, is limited to 500 amps, which means a maximum in theory of about 200 kilowatts. And if you try to charge this vehicle at 200 kilowatts with a taper, it would take probably 2 hours to fully charge it, maybe plus or minus. So what they really wanted to do was to get the main benefit of a higher voltage system, which would be charging performance. But they didn't necessarily want to engineer the entire Ultium platform to handle an 800 volt strategy, because there's going to be other vehicles that are going to need to use this componentry that won't be 800 volts. So when you plug this vehicle into an 800 volt capable charger, it switches into a parallel to a series mode, or the other way around, and essentially parallel to series, and then it goes you know, basically taking the charging voltage from 400 to 800, which means 500 amps at 800 volts would be 350 kilowatts. And so that's why this vehicle can charge so fast. It's because when you plug it in, it goes ka-chunk, I guess. That's why I'm going to a charger right now, because to me, that's the most interesting thing about this vehicle, is that it can charge so freaking fast, and it does this 400 to 800 volt switch. I've never experienced it, but that's the one thing I'm like so curious about. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? And so I'm guessing the chargers that we're heading to are limited to a 350 amp max capability, just because they're the ABB units at Electrify America. But if we can get 350 kilowatts, I would be happy. We're preconditioning the battery. Let's hope these are not it's a non-limited station, although I've been road tripping the Rivian around and they've all been limited, all the ABB chargers with Electrify America, at least today. We also should try SuperCruise and some other things. I do want to continue talking about the battery though, because that's such an important component. Right now, for early production Hummer EV, the battery pack is an LG pack. We all know GM has a partnership with LG, and these battery cells were made in Korea. However, by year end or sometime sooner, some plus or minus, don't quote me, all of the battery packs for the Hummer EVs, all of the cells, maybe for the entire Ultium system, will be built in one of 3 factories in the US, being total local production, local as in terms of our country, production of battery cells. And so these cells in this truck came off a pilot line in Korea, and yeah, so basically that's pretty interesting. They're going to be the same cells, no difference I would expect. But yeah, that's just a little bit of info for you there. So what else should I talk about? The seats are wonderful. Just the layout, the way I can sit, the view out the front, it feels cool, and everyone looks at this thing. You are like either the most loved or hated person on the road. I can't tell which. I don't know if this carries the same stigma as old Hummers, where it was like this, you know, fuel burning situation where it was inefficient and everyone hated you because you were burning fuel, but then some guys liked it because it was kind of cool. I love the original Hummers, for example. H2s maybe not so much, but I think this might be a little bit kinder and greener, and people might start liking it a little bit more. Look, at the end of the day, it's still more efficient to drive this from an MPGe perspective than it would be to drive a, you know, combustion vehicle. You could make the argument that this thing has a lot of batteries though, and so yeah, efficiency isn't a word that's going to come up very much in this vehicle. In terms of like the display, I can see my kilowatt output up top just fine. I can see a compass, my speed. I just personally don't like any of the graphics here. I just think it's not the most visually appealing. The throttle has great tip in. It's really easy to drive for being, you know, this super truck with these huge capabilities and extract mode and crab walk. You would think it's kind of hard to drive and everything. You don't need to be afraid of this. What we need to do though is try crab walk, like badly. That's the one thing I've just been dying to do. I want to spend a whole day and only drive around my town in Colorado in crab walk. So the rear steer feels pretty good. I like that quite a bit. We got a new Toyota Tundra in front of us. And so what I'm going to do is just go down to the end of this street. We'll go past everyone. And yeah, like everyone turns heads. I think I just broke this neighborhood here. And we're going to try some crab walk action, because this is going to be the coolest thing. First of all, U-turn situation, boom. By the way, in normal mode, the rear axle steering targets a 0.3 to 1 steering ratio to the front. So that's what we're in now. You need quite a bit of lock to get the 10 degrees to happen. In off-road mode, it targets a 0.6 to 1. And then in terrain mode, let me make sure I actually got that, not the other way around. I get off-road mode and terrain mode mixed up because, yeah, terrain is the more aggressive off-road setting for like rock crawling and stuff. And in terrain mode, it's a 1.2 degree to 1, 1.2 to 1 ratio. So for every 1 degree of steering you put in up front, you should in theory get 1.2 degrees on the rear axle until it maxes out. So that's just how it's targeted. Let's hold the crab walk button here. Crab walk is on, and I believe it's instantly in this mode. I don't know how to do it. Oh wait, it just went off. Okay. So holding the crab walk situation, it just went out. Why aren't we doing crab walk? Holding crab walk. Oh, maybe I need to hold it until this completes. Still holding. Now I can let go. Yeah, now we're in crab walk, which is very interesting. Oh, look at this. This is quite an interesting situation. So we can go up to about 180 degrees on the wheel, maybe even more. Yeah, about 180 degrees on the wheel here for it to go sideways. Whoa, that is an awkward sensation, and one I really like. It's hard to like actually turn. You gotta like put in a ton of lock at that point. Whoa, crab walk, coolest thing ever. And then I click that off and we're back in rear auto. Can we do it while we're driving? So here we are, turning left, turning right. What am I saying? I'm gonna hold the crab walk thing down until it completes here. How fast can you go in crab walk? So now it says crab walk is on. Ride height normal? No, I must have gone over the allowable speed for it. Anyway, we'll have to crab walk some more. That was freaking neat. Let's rip it to the Electrify America charging station. Whoa, 574 kilowatt output there. Not even watts to freedom node, but you just gotta like counter steer this thing when you're hard on the throttle because it's just pulling you everywhere. It's excessive, it's soft, and I think that's the best part about it. The other thing that's kind of neat about it is even though it's soft and floaty, the brakes are extremely responsive and powerful feeling. I'm impressed with the braking. It's got huge power, seemingly at least a strong booster. I don't know how the brakes would hold up from a longevity standpoint. Great comfortable seats, 350 kilowatt charging. And this is by far the craziest EV I've ever driven in terms of excess. And I love everything about it. I really do love the Americanness of this thing. It's a little wild. Let's go see what it does at a charger. So we are merging up to highway speeds now. Let's see how it feels. First of all, this is just normal mode. Let's try a 50 mile an hour acceleration at about 35% state of charge. Sounds interesting. 630, 680 kilowatt. 680 kilowatt. So it does 106 miles an hour allegedly and slowing down. Interesting that when you, the steering is so loose, the whole thing is loose. Like when you hit the brakes, you gotta like steer into it because it just depends on the angle of the road. It's heavy, you can feel it, but it feels neat. Interestingly, no road noise here. We're doing 70 miles an hour. It's quiet. Can I SuperCruise? SuperCruise unavailable. No road information. That is the problem with SuperCruise. Blue Cruise, other systems will revert to normal lane centering, but you need to take certain SuperCruise roads in order for this to work. And honestly, I don't even think I-25 works, but this one does. Now we're on SuperCruise. Here we go. Let's try the lane change. Into the left. Auto lane change, changing lanes. I'm not doing anything, just covering the wheel, and we're good. I actually don't even need to I don't have to touch the wheel in this, right? As long as it's green, it's doing eye tracking. And so this is like ultimate American excess right here. I'm just sitting back in the Hummer EV as it drives itself down the road. I don't have to touch the wheel. This is absolutely amazing, and it rides so nice. And now it says SuperCruise disengaging because something's going on over here, so that kind of makes sense, and I'll turn the system off. So we got a little bit of SuperCruise, but then of course it's finicky about where it does and doesn't work, and that's because the freeway is ending up here, and so and so and so on. So the acceleration is strong, but it doesn't actually feel like that crazy fast. It's not like a Plaid, or even the Rivian feels faster in my impression at speed, and that's just because I think this thing is so heavy. So it has a lot of power, but it has a lot of weight. We're also not that high charged, so that could certainly play a factor. Yeah, this traffic is not looking so hot, is it? Yikes. I think we should not sit in this. We should exit to the right. Here we go, everyone out of our way. We're in a Hummer. Boom, foot down. Full Hummer driving style. Oh, man, the longer you stay in it, the more power it gives you. It doesn't give you everything at once. It increases, which actually is a very pleasant sensation. So I know we don't get much highway time with it, but I think my initial impression is you could do a road trip in this and it would be so comfortable. You actually have, with this glass roof, quite an airy feeling cabin, a really soft suspension. Yeah, it's nice, but everything just, to me, feels very plasticky. But it is badass. There is something really freaking awesome about this that I just love. And SuperCruise is great when it works. I'm a big fan. I love SuperCruise. I just wish it would revert to normal lane centering on 2-lane roads and other stuff, and that you just need to touch the wheel for, like every other system out there. Anyway, Let's raise the suspension, see how long that takes. So you got to double click because you got to bring up the suspension side, and now we're raising up. And it's just walking its way up. And it does get stiffer the higher you go, of course. And that's mostly because, now I'm going to put us back into normal, mostly because you have more air pressure built up in the suspension system, so there's less flex that it can have. Wow. Let's go plug it into a charger. We won't have time to charge it that long. Then we'll do a watts to freedom, and then I got to bring this thing back. And the off-road capability, which I haven't really touched on here, we took it off-roading all day because they wanted to showcase this. I personally am not so convinced everyone is gonna do that. Everyone else's video will be focused on off-roading because everyone driving this truck in the Wave pretty much only had time to drive it off-road. So I was like, guys, I need the truck for a couple hours so I can go do my thing. And so nice of them to let me borrow this. But I didn't drive so I could share my first impressions with you here. So anyway, we're just hammering over to the Electrify America station. It's, I really actually think it's enjoyable. The softness is fun. It's not uncontrollable. It's a really well controlled and tuned suspension to handle this much weight so comfortably and so, controllably, to just hammer it around like this. You do hear, like driving around in parking lots and on roads like that, how heavy it is, because you could just hear the tires just crying for their lives. They're just as you make tight turns in places. Anyway, I should stop driving like an idiot in a Hummer EV. It just makes me want to drive over curbs and do stupid things in a car. It's a totally different sensation than the Rivian I have been driving this week. Night and day difference, totally opposite vehicles. No one should ever cross-shop them because they drive completely differently. They're for two completely different types of people, and I personally love both of them. Let's go plug it in now, finally. I know I've been saying it like 6 times, but let's plug the damn thing in and see this 400 to 800 volt switch, shall we? You now join us at the Electrify America station, where this was a pain to squeeze in here. You can see some engineers doing some charging testing in all these cars. I'm not sure who they're with, perhaps an outside company doing some benchmarking work. But anyway, let's plug this thing in at 350 kilowatts and see how it does. We got a lot of manufacturer plates around. Looking forward to seeing how this thing does here. And let's hope this charger can deliver the juice. By the way, let's just take a look at our stats. We're at 35% state of charge. Oh man, I gotta squeeze into this thing here. Let's take a look at some stats. I tried a couple things here. It has really good route planning, actually. If we go back, buckle up to shift, I understand. How do I cancel that? Don't know. It says it's still preconditioning the battery pack. If I go here to Google Maps built in, it's kind of like the Polestar. You can see here, it routes charger, 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 just like that. Really fast, really good. Tells us how long we need to wait at each one. And then for the lifetime of this vehicle, it's used 1.1 miles per kilowatt hour. Let's see if it logged our energy consumption on the last drive. No, it didn't, sadly. Anyway, I can reset trip 1 and let you know at least what it takes to get back. Let's shut it off, plug it in, and see what it does. Well, we just barely got it to reach. It's crazy windy. I just want to see, and it's so loud, you can't really hear anything. Let's see what the Hummer says. 250 kilowatts. So yep, it's a 350 amp limited charger. Yeah, this thing's about mid 600 volts nominal pack voltage. And that sort of makes sense, and maybe the battery wasn't totally up to temp, but 252 kilowatts. So it does show you kilowatt rate. That's nice. All right, well, we actually have to go. We can't wait much longer here. We got to go. But 250 kilowatts, I will take it. That's not terrible. You can see the headlights doing their little charging dance I mentioned. The fans are ripping. Perhaps it's even a little bit too warm of a battery. It's hard to say. The screen seems to be working here now. So I've just hit touch to return. Yep, 243 kilowatts. Let's hit stop, unplug. It's time to go. Got to return this thing. Big thanks to GM for letting me take it for a couple hours, by the way. All right, got to back up. You know what's weird is I just tried to put it in gear before I buckled up and it wouldn't let you. So this is the first time the truck feels big. This does feel quite large now. Interesting that they're doing all this engineering work. I don't know, my guess is it's probably a company like Roush Engineering or something like that that does a lot of benchmarking and mileage accumulation type work. Anyway, let's continue out of here. That charger says it's at 90%, but it's not actually charging anything. So we should do a watts to freedom, and then we should log the efficiency heading cross town and sort of stop and go mixed traffic, and that should be that. So to do a full launch, we're only at, you know, 40% state of charge, something like that. I'm gonna come to a stop somewhere. We got to find a good spot to do it. I'm going to double tap the traction control, and then we're going to absolutely nail this thing. Let's try the map system to get back to where we need to go. Mountain 23-minute drive, 13 miles. Mountain shadows. Hit go. It's got Google Maps built in. It's actually a really good system. I don't think it's running Android Automotive. So let's make a U-turn here. G-Wagon on off-road tires. Hell yeah, that's awesome. And let's get it lined up here and do a full launch, shall we? A full watts to freedom. So coming to a stop, double tap the traction control. 1, 2. Yeah, the seat's shaking. Things are happening. Oh wait, continue. Left vehicle's lowering. The noise is crazy. I didn't really let it lower all the way, sadly. We have to do it one more time. Oh, what a shame. There was a car coming up, so we're just waiting for watts to freedom to lower all the way. So let's do it one more time. Watts to freedom, stand by. Understood. Armed. Floor it. Flooring it. Release brake. Oh. Okay. Much faster when you launch it like that, like significantly faster than just nailing it off the line, because it pre-arms the suspension. So do I just double tap it to get out of watts to freedom mode now, or can I just hit mode? Yeah, just twist mode, and then I can go back to my mode, which I have set up. All the other engineers were like, what on earth is this guy doing? Obviously they've never seen an out of spec video. They canceled my navigation, sadly. So let's go out onto the main road, I guess. And then we gotta bang a right. Well, that was impressively fast, but you gotta use watts to freedom to really get the full jolts off the line. I can only imagine what it was like, what it would be like fully charged, but we were definitely spinning that front tire a little bit. So sorry for the skid marks over there, but we have to test the vehicle. Back out onto the road we go. Sun's in my face. We're gonna merge onto the 10 West. So there's a bunch of different modes here, I guess. I don't think there's a sport mode or anything. So there's off-road, terrain, tow haul, normal, and then my mode. And the problem with all of these is every time you change the drive mode, it lowers down back to normal height settings. So we were off-roading today, and every time you'd have to keep raising up the truck after you switch a mode. So that is an interesting strategy. Not sure what I think about that, but it crab walks. So like, can it do any wrong? The answer is no. It is so freaking sweet, this thing. And it's something cool about driving something so soft and so heavy and that accelerates like this. I just kind of really do like it, and I kind of hate that I like it this much, but I really like it a lot. Let's head back just to check the amount of regen deceleration. So we've seen 670 output, I believe. Should we skip our exit for this? Yes. Okay, power down, 75 miles an hour. No one's behind us. Full regen paddle. 264 kilowatt regen. Okay. We're just going to merge over into the right lane. The right side visibility is a little bit tough because the belt line is quite high. So you just need to be a little bit mindful of what's around you. Or at least I need to be what's mindful. You're not driving, so I should be the one mindful. Power down. It is crazy to drive like this. And then full regen with braking. 318 kilowatt regen. That's the most I've ever seen. Holy smokes. I think it can do more. So it not only does it do a lot when you touch the regen paddle here, but when you hit the brake pedal, it blends even more regen. That's insane. Wow, the mirror is not great on that side. Why just, maybe it's just like totally set incorrectly for me, but you gotta like set it down because you're so high. And every time I look in the rearview mirror, I think there's someone tailgating us, but it's actually just the tire. Wow. Okay, let's see if we can get more regen here. Picking up the speed, picking up the speed, picking up the speed. Regen, paddle, and brake. Well, we got a little ABS there and it backed off, but it seemed to do pretty well. Still, 318 kilowatt regen is the most amount of regen I've ever experienced. Why is that exciting? I don't know. I must live a very boring life. But we got to hammer it back. They're like waiting on this thing. So we just gotta rip it around. Yeah, this mirror needs to be, I don't know why I'm having issues with it, but I am. Regen panel all the way down to a stop. Lovely. I'll update you at the end if I get any more regen, but I'm just so thrilled with that. So back at the charging station, we saw about 240 kilowatts or so, and that's right in line with this problem I've been seeing across the country with these Electrify America ABB units and maybe others, but a 350 amp limitation. You can see this car's nominal pack voltage is 691 volts. I just checked on it. 691 volt nominal. Full charged is 802. So, you know, in order for it to get the 350 kilowatts at 500 amps, you would have to come off sort of bottom pack voltage in order to get that. But anyway, it's not like an 800 volt car all the time. Obviously, the pack fluctuates. So it's 691 nominal, which is kind of like in the middle. And we only saw about 240-ish kilowatts from the charger, and that would make sense because at 649 volts nominal times 350 amps, that would equal 240,000 watts, which is 240 kilowatts, plus or minus, you know, we're in the range. So, you know, while the Hummer can charge at 350 kilowatts, it's really hard to find a charger that can actually deliver that much. And I challenge all of the automakers to really start making this a bigger issue. I think it is. You know, if the car says it should do 350 kilowatts, you pull up to a 350 kilowatt charger, it should be able to do that. Simple stuff. But the way these chargers are rated, it's getting complicated, and I think it's going to lead to poor experiences. And, you know, we could have had a great situation where we had 350 kilowatts there, but nope, charger's limited. So anyway, I have to say it's kind of a widespread issue across the country where I've noticed this with the Rivian all week, and now this, where I can't get more than 350 amps out of the charger. Now that car's at 400 volts, so we're talking 140 kilowatts. Here we're talking 240 kilowatts, so it's a better situation, but we're still not getting the full 200 out of that or 350 out of this that we should be able to get. Either way, props to the GM engineers for engineering a vehicle that can charge at 350 kilowatts, though. It's the first one to market. They're already on sale, and yeah, I can't wait to be able to do a charging test of this thing once we get one back in Colorado, because there is a 500 amp capable DC fast charger by my house that I know of that I can use to show you guys the full charging curve of this thing, and it's just going to be insane. Can't wait to try it out. We haven't really tested the handling yet, but let's just go one level off on traction control. You hear that tire squeal? Oh my gosh, there's no front end grip here. It's just so heavy, it's like asking to move a cruise ship. Wow, I've never, and the tires are meant for off-road, of course. They have great longitudinal grip from acceleration and a deceleration point, but from a lateral grip standpoint, whoa! You gotta be mindful of the weight. There's no way around physics, but it handled smoothly, predictably. You know, front axle went, of course, first. I think if I applied more throttle, the rear would have actually come around. All three motors in this vehicle, I should talk about that too. They're all identical motors. The front gear ratio is a little bit different than the rear. So the rears are tuned more for acceleration. The front motor's tuned more for high speed driving. And so I asked some of the engineers, is it mostly front wheel drive when you're just cruising? They said yes, although sometimes we optimize the rear motors just depending on thermals, and so the strategy will change often. But I have to say, like, the motors, the throttle, all of the inputs here from a steering, throttle, and braking perspective feel extremely well calibrated. It's like these guys know what they're doing. And I have to say, even driving the Bolt around, the Chevy Bolt, that is a very grown-up drivetrain experience, and this is just the whole next level. This thing is built solid. It's been engineered well. You can tell they have just hammered this thing in their testing, and certainly it is pretty wild. And I just can't believe the acceleration in watts to freedom, even at low states of charge. And yeah, just the handling dynamics. It's not fast in a corner. Like, yeah, but it is really fun. There's something intoxicating about driving something this heavy, you know, so fast. I'm really, really enjoying it. And there you have it, a pretty extensive drive in the Hummer EV. I've really enjoyed it. Let's take a look at our efficiency just to close out the video to see what we got on that last drive. I can't imagine it's very much. If you're gonna drive quickly cross town, again, I didn't even drive it all that hard. 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour is what you can expect. Thanks again for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. We'll see you on the next one. Beautiful views here in Arizona.